Good afternoon. The Senate Finance Committee is now in session, and we have several bills to hear and then some voting, and to try to be back on the floor by 3:30. So let's see if we can expedite. Okay, let's start with, yes, okay, with House Bill 1052, Delegate Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. If it's permissible, could I have Captain Matthew to come up here with me as a technical expert?
Sure, we can do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And those mics are adjustable, you can move them about.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's with both honor and with sadness that I am presenting HB 1052 before you today. As you can see by the title of the bill, is named, also has the name of Flynn and Laird Act in it. And Madam Chair and members of the committee, the fallen firefighter, Lieutenant Nate Flynn of Howard County Fire Rescue and Frederick County Battalion Chief Joshua Lynn is what the act is named after. And Madam Chair, if you would allow me to have Mrs. Lynn and Mrs. Flynn and Mrs. Laird to stand to
Yes,
acknowledge the
please
committee,
do
I certainly
so.
would appreciate it. And their family is here also.
You have our condolences and also your thanks for the sacrifice that your family has experienced.
The bill before you is singular in purpose. The bill is to attempt to prevent other first responders from being killed as they were in an electrical fire. The bill before you presents the type of gas piping that must be used in homes so that electrical or lightning, when it strikes, does not prevent this type of fire anymore. We've had these types of fires all across the nation, and it hit us home recently, and that's why this bill is before you now. The bill provides requirements for arc-resistant corrugated stainless steel pipe. And Madam Chair, if you would, I would like for Captain Matthew to present to you the types of CSST pipe is what it's called, that is being proposed in the bill to prevent any additional accident in the state of Maryland. With that, with your permission, I'd like to turn over to Captain Matthew.
Okay, just move that mic over. We don't have a lot of time. We've got about 10 bills to do and a little less than an hour, and we'll need to be back on the floor. So we can't really do it justice, but educate us.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, Madam Chair Kelly, Vice Chair Feldman, and the members of the Senate Finance Committee. My name is Craig Matthews. I'm a captain with the Howard County Department of Fire and Rescue Services, and I'm currently assigned to the Fire Investigation Division. I have responded to and investigated over 500 fires throughout the state of Maryland. Numerous incidents, we've determined that the cause of the fires have been lightning-induced failures of the CSST gas lines within these structures. I've worked with engineers from the ATF Fire Research Laboratory right in Beltsville, Maryland, as well as I've worked with the private sector engineers as well. We've conducted and I've participated in several test burns related to CSST. We're seeing similar results in at least a few of those test burns that we've conducted in the laboratory that we're seeing on some of these fire scenes as well. So just to give you a little bit of knowledge on the CSST, I brought with me 3 examples today. And there's different versions of the CSST that provide different levels of safety. So right now, this is probably your most common that we're seeing in the state of Maryland. This is a yellow jacket, a single jacket. It is a non-arc resistive, it is a non-arc resistive jacket. This second piece is an arc resistive jacket. So it is a single layer jacket as well. And we're still seeing fires even in this arc-resistive jacket. So this piece that I brought with me, I actually took this out of a house fire recently where over a 100-foot span of this line, there was actually 6 arc holes in this, where at least one of those arc holes created a fire within the structure, within the floor system. And then lastly, I have this piece, which is a multi-layer CSST, which the outer jacket here is a conductive jacket, and then there's an aluminum mesh jacket, and then there's a non-conductive arc jacket on top of the corrugated stainless steel tubing here. So there's a couple different testing standards that I'm aware of right now. So there's the LC1, which is, all 3 of these meet the LC1 standard. So the LC1, just to give you a little background, that is tested to about 4.5 coulombs of energy. And this one, which is the multi-layer, is actually tested to the ICC-ES LC 1027 standard, which is tested to the 36 coulombs of energy. So essentially, this product here is what we are requesting in this legislation with the amendment, that all product is tested in accordance with the ICC-ES LC 1027. So that's a mouthful right there.
Okay, so that's
But
important.
because that testing standard is 8 times more stringent than this testing standard, and as you'll hear from others probably today, they're requesting the ANSI LC1 standard. And I can pass this around if you'd like to see it, but you can see that there's arc holes that are happening in this. I can't say that arcs and lightning-induced fires aren't going to happen with this one as well, because we are still seeing lightning damage much greater than what this is being tested to, but it's going to significantly reduce the amount of property damage, injury, and death in the state of Maryland. And that's what this bill is all about, is just safety and just trying to reduce the amount of property damage, injuries, and death in the state of Maryland.
Thank you. I wish we had adequate time to really be better educated than we can be, but we've got to try to get through the bill.
And Madam Chair, if I could just say one thing.
Yeah.
The amendment that you have before you is to ensure, paragraph number B, where corrugated stainless steel tubing is installed, only arc-resistant jacketed corrugated stainless steel tubing tested and listed in accordance with ICC-ES-LC 1027. That's what this is proposing in the amendment proposed by my good friend Senator Bidel.
Thank you. Senator Jennings.
Just a quick question. Is this the tubing that's used to go from the appliance to the supply, or is this also piped throughout the entire house?
Typically, based on what I've seen as a fire investigator, typically you have your gas service come in. Once it comes into the house, it typically hits a manifold, and then from there, this is used by contractors because it is more cost-effective on the labor side of things because of the way that it bends versus
They're
some
using
of the
cast iron.
iron pipe. So, and then it distributes to all the appliances in the house.
Okay. Is this going to change also the piece that goes, the connection from the line to the appliance? You know, like, let's say I buy a new stove, and so the answer is no. Okay.
I also have, Madam Chair, Tom Cole from Chief of Fire, Frederick County.
Well, you know what, we're going to accept the testimony of the witness you have at the table, considering we've got about 9 other bills to try to do. We can't do the justice we would really like to do, but I think you've educated us to know, and we're going to trust you, sir. Yeah, all right. Who would you say?
Mr. Cole is on the
Oh, okay. All right, we do have Mr. Coe down. Let's hear from him for a minute or so. And also from Craig Matthews.
Craig's up there, we need Margaret.
Okay, Margaret. All right,
And with that, Madam Chair, I will step back and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate it.
okay.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'll talk fast and make this quick. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today in support of House Bill 1052, also known as the Flynn and Laird Act. My name's Tom Coe, Fire Chief and Division Director for Fire and Rescue Services in Frederick County. The dangers of corrugated stainless steel tubing, or CSST, that is not arc resistant is not common knowledge to the general public. When high levels of electricity are introduced into a structure by a direct or indirect lightning strike, the unprotected CSST commonly fails when an arc is created with other nearby metal objects. The ensuing gas-fed fires caused millions of dollars in property loss, but moreover, those fires have cost lives. In Frederick County alone, we've experienced 2 fire fatalities within the last 4 years from lightning striking a structure that contained CSST that was not arc resistant. In 2018, a civilian died in a residential fire south of Urbana after lightning struck the residence. Non-arc resistant CSST failed, and the occupant was trapped by the ensuing fire. Then on August 11, 2021, this issue hit closer to home when Battalion Chief Josh Laird, a 22-year veteran of our organization, died in the line of duty, fighting a residential fire in a home that had been struck by lightning and experienced a failure in the CSST that was not arc resistant. If passed into law, House Bill 1052 will ensure that moving forward in Maryland, if corrugated stainless steel tubing is used, that it is arc resistant to the highest testing standard. For the safety of all Marylanders, as well as our firefighters who respond to the fires, I urge a favorable report for House Bill 1052 with the amendments agreed to by the sponsor and resist industry amendments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we'll hear from Margaret Novovich from the Frederick County Firefighters.
Good afternoon, Chair Kelly, Vice Chair Feldman, and members of the State Finance Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 1052, legislation named for Battalion Chief Josh Laird and Lieutenant Nathan Flynn. Josh was a friend, a fellow firefighter, and proud member of the Frederick County Career Firefighters and Paramedics Association, IFF Local 3666, who I am proud to represent before you today as an executive board member of this over 500-member organization. First and foremost, I want to thank so many who are advocating to make this change for the health and safety of firefighters. We are so proud of the work you are doing and your tireless spirit in the face of tragic loss. Thank you especially to the bill sponsors, Celeste Flynn and Sarah Laird, who have been working hard to advocate before senators and your staff in Annapolis this week. Many of you may never have heard of CSST or its risks before today, yet we firefighters are all too aware of the safety concerns related to CSST. This hits home for us because in Frederick County, we lost someone special to our public safety community on August 11th, 2021. As you work through this important legislation, I ask you consider this measure as needed correction to an existing problem. Without your intervention, new homes will continue with the existing standards for the installation and maintenance of gas piping systems and continue to pose great risk to not only our firefighters but our citizens we serve. We seek to honor Battalion Chief Laird and Lieutenant Flynn's service and ultimate sacrifice every day with our actions in Frederick County. Yet, I can think of no more fitting honor than to pass this legislation and make the lasting change that would undoubtedly save lives. We support the amendment the Fire Marshal is supporting, the sponsor's preferred amendment. I respectfully ask for a favorable report on House Bill 1052 and subsequent proposed amendments.
Thank you very much. Let's go. You've got about 3 other persons signed up. Okay. Okay, favorable with amendments. And we're going to give you a minute each to explain your amendments. Robert Torben and Robert Phillips.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Robert Torben. I'm a professional engineer with over 50 years of engineering experience. I'm currently the Director of Codes and Standards for Omega Flex, one of the CSST manufacturers in the United States. We support the bill, but with a different amendment that would refer you to ANSI LC 1 as opposed to ICC LC 1027. CSST has a long history in the United States, and I won't argue that, but House Bill 1052 asks you whether or not we should continue to use yellow or go to a black product. We agree that we should go to a black product, no longer use yellow. The question is it black to a national standard or is it black to a listing criteria? The CSST battles have been going on for a long time, so that we have been asked to defend and justify its continued use, not only in the courts, but also in the model code community, in the standards community, and at the state level.
So both sides agree we must act, but it's between whether it's CSST or CLCCI, right?
Well, the LC1 is a national consensus standard. There is a difference between a national consensus standard. The Baltimore, D.C. Building Trade Council submitted written testimony that has the support of the Maryland Plumbing Board, the Baltimore County Plumbing Board, WSSC, in support of ANSI LC1, because it's a consensus standard. ICC ES LC 1027 is written for a specific manufacturer for a specific product. It is bought and paid for by that manufacturer so that he can have his product evaluated. It is not a standard. If this board approves LC 1027, you are giving a monopoly to one product, one manufacturer, and at the expense of all other CSST products. And it's not recognized in any of the model codes, which forms the basis for the Maryland Plumbing Code.
Okay.
So you would be restraint of trade if
I
you were to use
assume, however,
LC.
that probably in the House, the CSST was
All
what passed.
CSST is installed exactly the same
But you're
way,
saying
whether it's
that's-
yellow or black.
Okay, that's
And
helpful.
whether it's multi-layered or single-layered, all done the same way.
Okay, that's very helpful. All right, and let's hear from Robert Phillips.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. My name is Robert Phillips. I am the Chairperson, Legislative Committee for the Maryland State Firefighters Association. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of facts. You've heard a lot of facts, and they're very, very good and very, very good information. But I am going to ask just one question on behalf of firefighters. I'm a past fire chief. I know what it is, and a firefighter. I know what it is to expect my firefighters to go into a burning building. My question is this. You've heard we've got different standards. You've heard we've got different products. What is the life of one person worth? Do we want to put a product out there and expect our first responders to respond with less than what we can do to make it safer for the public and for the first responders? I will leave you with that, and thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Let me just ask you one quick question, and a couple of members have a question. When this bill was in the House Committee, did you guys get to testify about the NCLCI?
We testified in support of the original bill and its concept. Yes, ma'am, we were in favor of that.
Okay.
We are in favor of the amendments as they have been presented.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. All right, let's see. Senator Kramer has a question.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Just so I'm clear on this. So the firefighters are comfortable with the amendment that we just heard the gentleman introduce with, that's an engineer? That is not the case. Okay, I'm seeing head shaking.
No, sir. No, the bill as it's been presented with you, I'm being given notes here. I have a note here from the fire marshal, sir. It says the plumbing board has agreed to amend their codes to meet this new bill, the new standard. We are in favor of the more stringent standard.
And is that what it is, a more stringent standard, and that's why okay. That's what I'm trying to wrap my head around, so thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, let me go to Senator Vital.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have asked the amendment to be drafted. It's in drafting now. So we actually haven't seen the amendment yet. We've seen the wording, but not the official amendment. I should have it tomorrow. I have a question for Mr. Tobin. So in the fire that happened in Howard County, that there were like 8 holes where the flames came up through that piping. What kind of piping was used in that house?
I'm not familiar with what particular product was used in that house. lightning is a very powerful force of nature. In fact, it's the most powerful force on the planet. There are no requirements in the state of Maryland building code to protect your house from lightning. None. You would have to voluntarily put a lightning protection system to stop the deleterious
Okay,
effects.
thank you,
So,
Mr. Hoban. I have another question. It's my understanding that some of the insurance companies are now going after product liability for certain types of this piping that have been installed in homes, and they're winning those lawsuits. Are you aware of that?
I have been deposed over 25 times in those kinds of lawsuits, okay, and we have not lost a case yet. But, to be fair, we're talking about the yellow product now. So we are in favor, I speak for Omega Flex, but we are in favor of only allowing the black arc-resistant product. The only argument is, what is the prevailing national standard going to be? LC 1027 is not a standard that can be adopted by code.
All right, thank you.
All right. Senator Jennings.
So, sir, when you testified, you mentioned the word monopoly. And you talked about one product that only, by monopoly, do you mean there's only one manufacturer that manufactures the product that you're talking about?
So in the United States, there are 3 U.S.-based manufacturing companies and 2 other suppliers. The LC 1027 was written by one of those manufacturers to this flash shield product, a multi-layered product that they wanted tested independently of the national standard LC1. So if you were to invoke 1027 as the standard for the state of Maryland, then only the flash shield product could be sold in Maryland, and therefore you would create a monopoly for Gas-Tite.
And so Gas-Tite is the manufacturer of that product?
Gas-Tite is the manufacturer of that particular product.
So no other manufacturer has something that is a multi-layer product
Correct.
that they've described that'll match what this bill's doing?
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
Could I just ask, do you agree with the answer we just got? Do you agree with the answer that was just given to Senator Jennings?
Yes, ma'am. I do believe that the gentleman has given you very accurate information. The only thing I would say is, there's nobody precluded from building to that same standard. You've got three major manufacturers, if I remember correctly. I put hundreds of feet of this stuff in as a mechanical contractor. There's more than one supplier.
Thanks so much. All right, that ends the testimony on this very important bill, because I wish we could spend more time on it, but we've got to go to the other bills on the list. Thank you. All right, we're going to go next to House Bill 699, Delegate Lehman, and if you want to come up now. Behavioral Health Grief Counseling Services. All right, you have 2 minutes.
I get 2 minutes?
I don't care, we're not gonna get through this stuff. 699.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair, and to the esteemed members of this committee. I am Mary Jane Coolin, and I'm Delegate Lehman's Chief of Staff, and sitting in, you can say I am her body double today.
Okay.
This bill is a much-needed bill to provide grief support services for those who have lost loved ones to suicide or fatal overdose. Bereavement experts refer to this bill as a traumatic loss. First, the bill is going to allow, add this to the list of allowable expenditures under the Opioid Restitution Fund by authorizing support through the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner and the Behavioral Health Administration to include grief counseling services and resources on grief. This idea was brought to Delegate Lehman by researchers from Johns Hopkins whose life work is to better understand and thereby prevent death by suicide and overdose, which they more broadly refer to as self-harm. Second, the bill is going to create a work group that will be coordinated by the University of Maryland Public Health, School of Public Health, in consultation with the BHA and the Maryland Psychological Association. The work group will make recommendations to the General Assembly for model programs for survivors in traumatic grief and will consider the following: uses of the opioid restitution fund to improve the reach of quality traumatic grief care and post-intervention efforts, OCME staff levels, including requirements for existing staffing, program evaluation data from medical examiner, affiliated grief programs across the country and national post-intervention services, and the data from any needs assessment in the state focused on survivors of traumatic grief and their interactions with OCME.
Let me butt in and ask you this. What is the problem that you're trying to solve?
The problem is that, one, the staff members of the OCME who are actually dealing with the family and loved ones of a traumatic death, they are not getting the support they need, and also the family members are not getting any support after this happens. The reason that Delegate Lehman is sponsoring this bill is because she lost her brother 11 years ago to suicide, and she knows keenly the feeling of what it is when you lose somebody from self-harm.
I wish you could tell me everything you know about it, and I bet you know a lot. But what does this bill do to resolve the problem?
So what this bill is doing is making sure that the money is there for a program, these services going forward. This bill also is setting up a work group so that thoughtfully we can figure out who it is that needs to be hired in the office of the chief medical examiner and, provide them the staffing that they need to support not only the families, but also the people that work there who also are doing really tough work.
Okay, thank you so very much. Okay, we're going to move next to Senate Bill 1433, Delegate Walker.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for making me not read the whole thing.
Sure.
It's great to have a conversation with you.
Okay. Delegate Walker. And this is State Highways Designation, Piscataway Highway.
Thank you. House Bill 1433. Thank you, Madam Chair, and
Yes.
Mr. Vice Chair, and so many of my friends on this committee. It's been a great ride serving with you all. Haven't been over here often, but you guys have always treated me fairly. House Bill 1433 is a bill to rename a road we have in our district, which is basically the pipeline of our district in District 26, which is currently titled Indian Head Highway. I put in this bill in 2015 when my daughter at the time said, "Dad, it's wrong to have a road called Indian Head Highway." And we did some research on it and found out why they named it Indian Head Highway. Back when it was legal to kill Indians, they would line the road with the Indian parts, particularly the Indian heads, and that's why you have Indian Head Highway. Since this time came about, you've also had one of your colleagues, one of the senators that represents Charles County, he's put in a bill to rename Indian Head Highway as well. When I put the bill in back in 2015, I wanted to go from Indian Head Highway to Marshall Highway. The reason I wanted to do it, I said, hey, we'll take a negative connotation and make it positive. But I heard from the community, and the community actually, we thought about it and said, why don't we take something that's negative and make it positive, and do that by honoring one of the Indian tribes that we have that are recognized in the state of Maryland, which is the Piscataway tribe. Just so you know, as soon as you cross Virginia, I don't know if you can see this, but when you cross Virginia and enter into Maryland, right before you get to National Harbor, first sign you see besides Welcome to Maryland is Indian Head. So I encourage you all to help us out, pass unanimously in the House, and in doing so in the House, the rest of the committee wanted to become co-sponsors. It was approved by the State of Maryland, Maryland Commission on Indian Affairs. They approved it. I've even there's dialogues within the Native American community that we don't know about, but in doing so, they took a vote, and out of their chiefs, they had, let me give you the exact numbers, because you did receive a letter of opposition. 1 out of the 5
Okay.
voted to oppose it. But besides that, there's community support for it. There's an online petition which got 9,000 signatures.
Okay, we got to go back in a little while. I'm trying to get through the bills for the
Thank you.
people that we've had assembled. Senator Augustine.
I'm very supportive of the bill. I did see that, the opposition.
Yep.
If you would just share with us the other piece, with the four, that would be fantastic. Very supportive of the bill.
Yep, they came on board and they took a vote. I mean, it's a democracy, and this one person has inner workings on who should be the leader, who should be consulted. And I said, we're going to move forward with this. We need
Thank
to do it.
Okay, Senator Kramer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank Delegate Walker for his incredible public service all these years.
Thank you.
And you'll be missed, and you've left your mark on the Maryland General Assembly and the state of Maryland, so thank you for that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks so much.
I
for
see a
this
lot of
very
friends.
good
Thank you so
bill.
much. Appreciate it.
Okay, we're going next to House Bill 1026, Delegate Valentino Smith. Human Services, Two-Generation Family Economic Security Commission membership.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is, for the record, Carrie DeSantis, and I am sitting in for Delegate Valentino Smith. Today, I present HB 1026, which will add a member with lived experience in poverty to the Two-Generation Economic Security Commission. A person with lived experience will add an important voice to the commission and will improve policy recommendations which generate from their work. HB 1026 passed both the Appropriations Committee and the House floor unanimously. So I'll be very brief. It's a straightforward bill, but just a brief review of what the Second Generation Commission does and how it was established. It was established in 2017 by an executive order, and then in 2020, it was established in statute and is now housed in the Department of Human Services. And I'll just name a few of the legislative mandates that it has.
Well,
But-
you don't have a lot of time.
Okay, I understand. Yeah.
It does.
But I was just going to say, it basically looks at multi-generational poverty and how to solve some of the issues that are inherent with multi-generational poverty. And one of the mandates, there's 8 mandates, I'm not going to list all of them, but one says to solicit information and guidance from external sources with direct knowledge and experience in addressing multi-generational poverty. So the bill will, adding a lived member, someone that actually has lived in poverty within the last 3 years to the commission, as a commissioner, will add a crucial voice to the commission. So we urge a favorable report in HB 1026.
Thanks so much. All right, we're going next to Delegate Pina Melnick, House Bill 1082. Okay, if you're representing her,
Yes.
you got the least amount of time you can use to tell us in 2 minutes or less.
Okay, I can do that.
What the bill
Good
does and why
afternoon.
we should support this good bill.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman Kelly and Vice Chair Feldman. I have along with me Dr. Cynthia Bauer, if there's any questions. She's the director of the Horowitz Center for Health Literacy.
Sure.
I am pleased to present House Bill 1082. This bill addresses a common problem this committee faces. What is an accessible, patient-centered health system for Marylanders? Each session, we work to expand access to some aspects of healthcare: insurance coverage, maternal health, mental health, and substance use disorder services. Until now, we have not tackled a key social determinant and one of the root causes undermining Maryland's progress on healthcare access, equity, and more. That is health literacy. What is health literacy? It's a two-sided situation about accessible, useful information and services for health. One side of health literacy, we legislators know well because our constituents regularly call our offices to tell us about letters and forms that deny them benefits they thought they had or charge them for services they thought were in-network. They tell us about not having access to broadband and telehealth services. They also miss appointments and can't see their health care providers to get trustworthy, personalized advice and care. But we don't know the other side of health literacy as well. This is the side that HB 1082 tackles. Our public agencies and health information services providers may be well-intended, but many times the information they create is too dense, too complicated to be useful to our constituents. In addition, health services may be too hard to find, understand, and navigate to benefit our constituents to the maximum extent possible. To be clear, health literacy isn't a problem of poor reading skills. It's a problem that affects us all whenever we encounter health information and services that don't meet our needs in order to make healthy choices to live our best lives.
Let me butt in and ask you a question, because
Yes,
we
ma'am.
got 5 more to go. And in a few minutes, we got to be back on the floor, and I want to get to everybody. How does this do a better job than the status quo in terms of our understanding health literacy or having it be observed?
Basically, it's common sense language of health, but I also have Dr. Bauer answer that question more further.
Well, I can't even take another witness right now.
Okay,
So-
but it's common sense language explaining health concerns. For example, if you're in the hospital and they give you the discharge papers would be in common sense language that one can understand. Because what is happening, people will misinterpret that language and not getting the procedures that they
The language
require.
is too highbrow and too stilted, and not at the level that the average person would understand it.
Correct.
Okay.
It's just making this common sense language. It's also supported by multiple state agencies like Kaiser Permanente, Care First, MedChai, the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange.
Okay. Thank you. Senator Reedy has a question.
I just wanted to see, I'm looking where the bill, how do they define common, I mean, I think the aim of the bill is good. How do they, but mandating it in law, common sense language, how do they define that? I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No problem. It just will make the explanation of your health requirements or your.
I see the definition, I think, I see the definition.
You see the definition is in 1080.
Yeah, plain
Okay.
language.
Plain
Okay.
language, plain and
Okay.
simple.
Okay, thank you.
We'll tell the delegate you did a good job. You did.
My pleasure.
Okay, we're going next to House Bill 1188, Delegate Patterson, Public Health Sickle Cell Disease.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Kelly, Vice Chair Feldman, and members of the committee. My name is Kara Franklin, and I'm a stand-in for Delegate Patterson. I'm here to talk to you about House Bill 1188. Sickle cell disease is one of the most potentially lethal genetic diseases that has severe physical, emotional, and social.
We're familiar with it. Tell us what this bill is going to do
Okay.
about it. Okay.
You got it. The bill is a compilation of 4 different bills. I can go through all of the bills and what it does, but I can just tell you that all the stakeholders worked carefully together and came together with this one bill. So all 4 were combined into one. It just helps to provide critical resources and abilities to advocate for sickle cell services. Do you want me to go through some of the details?
Well, how is it better than, what's the problem in the status quo?
So they were
with
finding that as people went from pediatric patients to adult patients, it wasn't following with them. So it's a way so that pediatric patients, it carries with them. The other thing they wanted to do was enhance the online resources that the Department of Health has for them. The big issue is that they also want to make a recommendation, a study, for the ideas of a registry, sickle cell registry. So, lastly, I think it's just a timeline for the submission of the report and the recommendations.
Okay, are there other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going next to House Bill 1250, Delegate Feldmark, Task Force to Study Solar Energy Incentives.
Hello, my name is Katie Mettle. I'm Delegate Feldmark's Chief of Staff. Thank you for having me. I'm here on behalf of HB 1250, establishing a task force to study solar incentives. This is a very simple bill. It's to create a task force with multiple stakeholders from multiple industries who play different roles within bringing more solar energy to our state, in order to examine the status quo, I should say, of solar energy incentives and see if we can improve them. We've seen a wide variety of legislation this year dealing with different aspects of promoting solar energy development and incentivizing different goals related to solar energy. We already have a variety of solar incentives in place, an assortment of tax incentives, local, state, and federal, some already established and others proposed for consideration this session. We have direct grant programs and solar renewable energy credits. And so far, collectively, the incentives we have in place are not quite getting us where we want to be. This task force will bring together a wide range of stakeholders to look comprehensively at the goals we're trying to achieve and the best possible incentive structures to help us get there. We need to consider the full range of our solar goals and figure out what incentives will be most effective in advancing those goals. This task force will deliver its report by December 1st, 2023 for your consideration during the 2024 session. And you have received written testimony from a broad range of stakeholders supporting this legislation. It passed the Ways and Means Committee unanimously and passed the full House with bipartisan support. We respectfully ask for your favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, let me ask, in what way will our passing this bill help to clarify more so the nature of solar energy incentives?
Well, the stakeholders who will be involved in the task force want to be able to have a thoughtful conversation about the current status quo and where we can go from here. And they are charged with studying a few specific things, such as the impact of grant programs, tax credits and exemptions, solar energy credits, and other financial incentives on our ability to meet our goals in the RPS, and how the solar alternative compliance fee is calculated and its market relationship to the value of solar energy. There are a few other things mentioned specifically in the bill that they will be charged with looking at specifically.
What about this particular group of stakeholders, or what about the structure within which they're going to work is going to make this work better than the status quo?
Well, it will involve, I think, about how far away from December 2023? We're about a year and a half or so of folks from the environmental movement, the labor movement, and also state and local government officials, as well as folks from PEPCO and Delmarva Power or other utilities actually coming together as a group to discuss and to research.
So you're going to have the right people at the table.
Yes,
The key question they are to answer when you get them all at the table is what?
Are we doing the best we can? And if not, what would that look like?
Okay. Are there any questions from, okay, members see none. Thanks so much for your testimony.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Okay. Now we're going to call on Delegate Bridges for HB 1336. Greater Baltimore Transit Governance and Funding Commission.
Hello, Madam Chair and honorable members of the Finance Committee. My name is Asia Williams. I'm Chief of Staff for Delegate Tony Bridges and will be presenting for him today. Thank you for the opportunity to bring HB 1336 before you. This bill establishes the Greater Baltimore Transit Governance and Funding Commission to study and make recommendations about the governance, funding, and performance of the agency in the Greater Baltimore region based on the August 2021 report published by the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board, our region's metropolitan planning organization. The BRTB is responsible for federal transportation funding in our region and developing our region's long-range transportation plan as part of the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. BRTB had a consultant complete the Baltimore Regional Transit Governance and Funding Study, which is a comprehensive analysis of national peer agencies and systems and an exploration of governance and funding models with recommendations for the mail-in system. The goal of this commission, once established, is to identify for the legislature an approach that more equitably distributes governing and funding responsibilities, improves performance, accountability, and increased ridership on Baltimore's transit system. MTA is one of just a few transit administrations in the country that is governed and operated by a state agency rather than a regional authority or local transportation department. MTA is part of the executive branch of the state and reports to the governor with no local oversight. State control means decisions about service, delivery, and investments are made exclusively by MDOT, MTA, and as a result, government and stakeholders in the region have limited input into regional transit investments, including service, operations, or strategic investments. This structure also doesn't help with coordination amongst local jurisdictions. The Baltimore Region Transit Governance and Funding Commission will review the findings of the BRTB study and make recommendations to the Maryland General Assembly based on examples from peer regions of successful structures for shared public transportation funding and oversight. Review of potential alternative distributions of responsibilities for public transportation planning. Would you like for me to keep going?
Well, let me ask you a question. You've been doing a good job. What is the difference between the advantages of having this body as opposed to just the state agency that single-handedly is doing it now?
The local jurisdictions don't have much input there, and they can't really speak on what is bothering their communities or what their community needs are, and they just get stuck with whatever the state decides.
Would this bill, if we were to pass it, have the same level of input coming from the state and having this as an additional input that to be considered, or are you asking that this be the sole input? In other words,
The state would still
the
have
direct-
input, but I don't know that they would have as much with this commission.
Oh, okay. All right. Did they testify when the bill was heard in the House? Did we hear from the,
No,
oh, they didn't?
not against it, no.
Okay, all right, that's important. All right, I don't see any other hands, thanks so much. All right, we're going next to Delegate Sample Hughes for 1370, Organ and Tissue Donation Awareness Fund, Annual Funding and Extension.
Hello.
Yes, how are you?
Good afternoon. My name is Ivana Ali. I'm with Delegate Sample Hughes. I'm here to ask for your support for HB 1370, Organ and Tissue Donation Awareness Fund, Annual Funding and Extension. HB 1370 reauthorizes and extends funding for Maryland's organ donor registry.
You can pull that little mic up and closer to your mouth and it
I'm
might,
sorry.
yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's
Okay.
better.
HB 1370 reauthorizes and extends funding for Maryland's organ donor registry to raise awareness of organ donation across the state. While it does not appear so on the MGA website, this bill is a cross-file of Senator Klaus-Meyer's bill, SB 574, which passed out of this committee and passed the Senate unanimously. Both bills are in the same posture and have been amended to specify that the general fund will provide funding for the difference between the annual donation and the program cost.
Well, I think you told us what we need to know. If we passed it already, the cross-file and they're in the
That's it?
same posture. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we're going to Delegate Frazier Hidalgo, HB 1391, and let's hear from you.
Hello. Oh, hello,
Clean
Chair Kelly.
Cars Act.
Oh, yep. Hello, Chair Kelly, Vice Chair Feldman, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Molly Igo. I am Delegate Frazier Hidalgo's Chief of Staff. So I am presenting House Bill 1391, the Clean Cars Act of 2022. So pretty simply, this bill is an excise tax credit for electric vehicle owners. As amended, it is limited to electric vehicles that have an MSRP cap of $50,000 or less, and they must be bought after fiscal year 2023 and before fiscal year 2027. I can go into further detail as well, but I know there are a few other bills after me, so.
Okay, well, just so that, are there any questions? All right. Okay. Okay, well, you've got a couple of other people. We'll try to hear them, but I'm not sure we got to vote. Okay, all right, let's see, we've got two favorable with amendments. Let's hear from them. The Maryland Auto Dealers Association, J. Peter Kitzmiller, and RWL on behalf of Greenland Technologies. That's Matthew Boley. You got 2 minutes each.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Matthew Boley of Rifkin Wiener Livingston here on behalf of Greenland Technologies Corporation. We are now, due to the most recent amendments, favorable on the bill. I'd like to thank Delegate Frazier Hidalgo for this legislation. We greatly appreciate his leadership on this issue.
Okay, well, that's helpful. What about J. Peter Kitzmiller?
I don't think
Maryland
he's
Auto
here.
Dealers.
I have seen him here. I don't know if he's
Okay.
here now.
Okay. You got a question,
Yeah,
Senator
well,
Reed?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to hear the rest of his testimony as to why they're now favorable. What about the amendments made the bill favorable?
Thank you, Senator. So Greenland Technologies Corporation is a manufacturer of electric, zero-emission heavy equipment property, forklifts, loaders, excavators, and the like. They're headquartered in New Jersey. Their manufacturing is in China, but they have recently announced that their first American manufacturing facility is going to be in Maryland. So what this program does is, or this legislation does, it creates a grant program that subsidizes the purchase of this electric, zero-emission heavy equipment up to 20%. So not only now are we helping to achieve, Maryland's emissions reduction goals, but we're also going to be promoting green industrial manufacturing jobs in Maryland as well. And in terms of, it was just technical amendments.
Okay.
We've been on board with the legislation the whole way through. It was just technical, not substantive.
So in the bill's current posture, you now are favorable?
Correct. We are now favorable.
Thank you very much.
And just one more question.
Senator Reeder.
So who's eligible for this is a grant program for, it also extends the excise tax credit, correct?
Correct.
Can I ask the sponsor?
Sure.
Sitting in for
Sure.
the bill sponsor.
Sure.
So who's eligible for this tax credit? Is it anybody that buys one?
So it's electric vehicles, they have to be $50,000 or less. And
Okay,
you have to buy it after fiscal year 2023 and before fiscal year 2027. So it's a 4-year window.
And how much does it end up being if, let's say it's a $40,000 electric vehicle, how much does the credit end up being for?
That's a good question. I don't know the exact,
It might
like,
be
how
in
it
there
breaks down.
somewhere.
But I could we could get the specific answer for you.
But there's no income basis on it, but it's about the expense of the car. It can't be it's not a 75,000. It's got to be something 50 or under.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your testimony. All right, this ends our bill hearing. Senate Finance Committee is now in a voting session, and we're going to start with which bill?
Okay, so before you actually get to the bills like on the floor, concurrences, I guess, usually come first. So you have a concurrence in front of you, and in front of you also is a reprint of Senate Bill 275 as amended by the House. First off, the House made very few changes to the processes set up in Senate Bill 275 as it went over. So basically the framework for the protections and how the program is going to operate are all intact in the bill. The House changes start on page, if you go to the reprint, let's see, where are we?
I see 27.
They start basically on page 15 of the reprint.
Okay.
And there were two significant, I would say, changes to the bill as it was sent over, and they would be on page 15. Up top, you'll see that instead of every employer having to pay into the fund, only employers with 15 or more employees would have to pay into the fund. It doesn't mean the employees of these employers would be exempt, but it means the employers themselves would not have to pay into the fund.
David, where is that?
That's on page 15 of the reprint. You'll see at the top on line 9.
It looks like it's still, you don't have a hand number 15 on here, so it's 15 of 30.
It's 15 of 32, yes.
Okay, and what line? I got you, I'm on
Line
line 9.
9. The House, and the House left intact, and some of the reasons you'll see for some of the language they added, they left intact that employee contributions begin on October 1st, 2023. So they struck all the language regarding the statutory limitation on how much can be pulled from, how much can be applied to an employee's wages and all that. That's all struck, and it's replaced with the language you see at the bottom. And it requires that the Department of Labor, every 2 years, determine what the maximum contribution will be, but it does provide certain limitations also between who pays and what. So the framework that you sent over was 25 for the employer, 75 for the employee. That is maintained, so the department has the flexibility of coming up with some factor between that, but it can't exceed 25% for an employer, more than 25% for an employer, or no, it has to be somewhere between that range, I'm sorry. It's kind of word, but it's between 25 and 75% for an employee or employer share. So the appropriate cost-sharing formula between the employers, and you'll see at the bottom, for making contributions to the fund of the program, including various formulas that range between a cost share of 75% paid by the employers and 25% paid by the employees, and 25% by the employers, and 75% by the employees. So it's got to be some range within that factor. Because they're giving the option to the department to come up with some factor within that range.
This is the House.
This is the House.
This is the House amendment. So it could be 50-50,
It could be 50-50, yes.
according to theirs, where we were very specific in saying that it was 75 and 25.
Yes.
They said it could be anything.
And within that range, yes.
And
So,
the Secretary of Labor is going to be the one that determines this?
well, there's also like,
All right, wait a minute. Let's speak one at a time. Senator,
yes, the secretary would have to, in consultation with state agencies and relevant stakeholders, to come up with this range. That's under C1. So the relevant stakeholders are included in every action that the secretary would have to take regarding studying the limit, the max contribution, the solvency of the fund. So if you see on B, I guess we should just go through this straight. On or before December 1st, every 2 years.
Senator Augustine has had his light on for a while. Are we passing something that your question is regarding?
Yeah, thank you. It just struck this area of the employees' wages, the .75. Does that show up again somewhere?
It allows after all this analysis is done, that it would allow this process to come up with whatever that deduction is going to be.
So it could be anything? Because it's silent on that now?
Every 2 years, in consultation with the state agencies, shall study and make recommendations regarding the appropriate total rate of contribution and the appropriate cost-sharing formula between the employers and employees for making contributions to the fund of the program, including various formulas that range between the cost share of 75% paid by employees and 25% by employers, and 25% by employees, and 25% paid by employers, and 75% by employees.
All right, did he answer your question?
He did.
All right, Senator Hershey.
I just clarified, there's no cap on the contributions.
The appropriate, no, under this, no, there's no cap.
This thing's getting worse and
Thank you.
worse.
The cost of, and then we go further and all the things they're supposed to include in the study is the cost efficiency and benefits of the department issuing a request for a proposal for seeking services of an outside contractor for the following: premium collection. I'm on the next unnumbered page after that. So they added this too, that basically the department may issue a request for a proposal for the service of an outside contractor for premium collection, basically to run the system, to run the program. That's the unnumbered page after the one we just went over.
Okay.
Am I the only one starting to be concerned about whether we're going to hurt the economic, what we hope is a rebounding? Because, I mean, you don't know what you're dealing with.
And that requires the study to report it to the relevant committees of the General Assembly, including AELR, going further on that unnumbered page. And then again, beginning in 2025, you'll see what I numbered in there because that's an amendment that was offered on the floor. Beginning in, the Secretary shall set the total rate of contribution and a percentage of the total rate of contribution to be paid by employees of employers and employers with 15 or more employees that will be in effect for the 24-month period beginning immediately following January 1st. And there was a technical, you'll see a C written in there, that's a technical correction in the amendments offered on the floor by the committee. The rate and percentages set under paragraph 1 of this subsection shall be based on a study required of this. The total rate of contribution shall be applied to all wages up to and including the Social Security wage base. And the percentages set under the subsection may not vary between employees or employers. What this says is that primarily this gets to the employees who are with employers 15 and under. They have to pay whatever all the other employees would have to pay. So you can't charge them more simply because their employer is not contributing. And so they also made a technical correction because of the there was a provision in the bill that said that an employer could contribute more than the employee, contribute a greater percentage of the employee's share if they wanted to. It was changed to 75% to match the parameters, and that came over from the Senate, and they're still within that 75%. Let's go to page.
Quick question.
Okay, you're recognized, and then we'll hear from Senator Hayes.
You're up?
I said you're recognized, and then
Okay.
Senator Hayes.
So if you would, go back to page 15, where it says, beginning October 1, 2023, each employee, et cetera, shall contribute, individual in the program shall contribute to the fund. So that's October 1, 2023. But then you went to the next page where this new language is, and it says, subject to paragraph 2 of this subsection, on or before June 1 every 2 weeks, beginning in 2025, the secretary is going to set the rate.
There's I had the same questions about that, and I had to talk to folks over in Economic Matters. There's language in the back, and you have this handout here, number 1 and number 2.
Mm-hmm.
You said there's another handout?
Yeah, it looks like this. These are the committee amendments. It should have been handed out with this.
All right.
There was as explained to me, there was an issue with effective dates in the back of the bill that they didn't account for, so they had to come in with a floor amendment. So this uncodified language in the back actually will provide that all this analysis occur and be reported back before contributions begin on October, are mandated under the bill under October 1st, 2023. So they have to come back on or before December 22nd, conduct all this analysis. So you may have another session to make an adjustment on this program, but they will have this system, they will have the information ready for contributions to begin on by October 1st, 2023, with this uncodified piece in the back that was added on the floor.
The conflict in the language here, there's something else in the back that is going to reconcile all
Yes,
of that.
yes.
And got it. Okay.
Senator Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know there was a question raised about the fact that the split was taken out, but we get a chance to see what the report is and evaluation is before session starts next year, right?
Yes, that was part of the uncodified language, that they would have to come back and see what at least the initial recommendation for the contributions would be, yes. They have to
Right.
come back.
And so this sets up the framework, but, and provide for a report to be done prior to us coming back to give us the ability to review what it is that the secretary and others are saying, and then make a decision in the next legislative session.
That would be I gather that would be the intent of the Economic Matters Committee in the House.
Got you. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so let's go further and let's go to page 18 of the reprint, 18 to 32. This is the other change. The House here is specifying that you can take existing leave under the bill that came across from the Senate. An employer could require an employee to use existing leave, and that would count towards their the leave benefit under this bill. The House struck that, and instead they're saying that a covered individual must exhaust all their employer-provided leave that is not required to be provided by law before receiving benefits under this title. So they would have to use all their other leave, and then they could access the leave benefit under here of up to 12 weeks. They made no changes to any of the parameters about how much leave could be applied to an individual and the reasons for that leave. And they added, and it's.
Let's be clear on that. They have to exhaust their leave before the 12 weeks kick in?
Before this kicks in, yes.
Well, let me ask this. Do they anticipate that some employers, once this bill passes, would be more stingy than they are now if you got to exhaust what they do before all of this kicks in? Is anything?
What was the question?
I'm
Madam Chair?
asking if the House is anticipating that some employers with this change might decide to limit from where they are now, since they got to go first, and then they've got to participate also in the joint.
I actually paid sick leave. It says here that that is not required to be provided that is not required to be provided under law. They would sort of take out the paid sick leave, which is only 5 days. So this would be under an employee policy for leave.
Okay.
And so that would be that change there. And they, also in the inserts, they added an additional qualifier for that requirement, that the employer-provided leave that is being exhausted shall be treated as the same leave from work for which benefits may be paid under this title. Well, actually, they're saying, okay, so of which shall be treated as the same leave from work for which benefits may be paid. Actually, so that still could possibly, under this qualifier, apply to the benefits you would get under here. So they just restructured it a little bit.
I would read this as that an employee would have to exhaust all the benefits that an employer pays or provides already before this kicks in.
Yeah.
But an employee is going to want to do that anyways, because that's
fully paid leave.
That's a much better benefit than what this is. This is going to provide $50 a week.
At minimum, yes.
Right.
Yeah,
You know,
depending on
so-
how much you make, yes.
Maybe 1,000.
Up to 1,000.
But that's a pretty broad difference. Yeah, you picked 1,000.
Okay.
Okay.
Senator Kramer.
All right, can we backtrack to the top of page 18? Because what was the net change here? Pardon me, with the additional 12 weeks, we had language in that related to I believe, pregnancy and I see there's a lot that's been stricken and then a lot that was put back in.
This was-
What's the net change there?
The net change there was what you did on the floor. They didn't make any changes here.
Okay, so this just reflects the floor amendment?
Yes, so you're
Got it.
looking at the third reader as amended by, so that was the floor amendment, so they didn't make any
Okay.
change to that.
Got it, thank you.
Okay, and let's go to page 26 of the reprint. This was another floor amendment that just clarifies that the department shall develop standard notices for an employer to use. There's a notification requirement in the bill, and this just says that the department has to develop a standard notice for an employer to use in addition to notices provided in accordance with regulations adopted by the secretary. So it just specifies further that they have a standard notice that they must allow that employers have access to use to notify their employees of the provisions of this law. And then we go finally all the way back to the uncodified language in the back. And again, a lot of these changes are here to account for the fact that there was, they missed something when they were doing these amendments about the July or the October 1st change in benefits. So at least on the top of the page where I have some handwritten stuff in there, that involves setting that right so benefits can start being paid, or the funds can start being collected on October 1st, 2023. And on the bottom of the page, it requires Department of Legislative Services to contract with a consultant to study and make recommendations regarding the capability of labor to implement and administer this program, and then report back on their findings on whether labor is actually capable of administering the program, because as you all know, there were some concerns with labor doing this program, given their experiences with the UI system. And the rest of it is all just technical renumbering because of the changes in the uncodified section. So those were the House amendments.
Okay, Senator Hershey.
Last part, who's, the DLS is doing the study?
No, we won't do it.
Okay.
We'll contract out for it.
Okay, and you'll contract out for it, they'll do a study to see if this is capable to be run by the government,
Yes.
and they'll decide either yes, or they'll decide, or no, or,
I don't
I mean,
think
do they
we
have to
will-
come back and say yes, and here's how they should do it, or they could say, no, we don't want the government trying to run this?
Well, the consultant will make a report of findings and recommendations to the governor and you on or before October 1st, 2022. So I don't know, I don't think they're going to make a decision. They're just going to have findings and recommendations. You have the ultimate say on how, what happens here. So you are the deciders.
But this year, that's what,
This year, yes.
2022?
Yes.
Okay, Senator Feldman.
I was just going to say, I mean, the language is pretty clear. It's just recommendations by October. Ultimately, it's going to have to be not done. That's just the study instead of recommendations, so it's not.
Senator Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, Madam Chair, I know you raised a question about, like, does this exacerbate the, slowing in the economy we had? One of the things that we had considered and decided not to go with, that the House actually did, was in cases where there are employers that have 15 or less, they don't have to pay in. And so, like, I know in this committee, over the last couple of years in trying to pass it, we've been trying to figure out ways to mitigate some of the impact that it may have on some of the small businesses. And I think the House has actually done that, or whatever. So no gripe here. I think the benefit, though, to those smaller employers, that their employees can still participate and take advantage of it and get some type of supplemental income. The other thing is, we heard, very publicly that the House was going to turn the whole thing into some type of commission or committee. It sounds like they backed away from that idea and really went with the framework in which we established here in the Senate, as opposed to just committing to a study and actually putting something in place. And so I don't know if there's any other questions, but I wanted to make a motion to concur with the House amendment.
Well, we've got some, all right.
If there's other questions, I'll wait.
Okay. Senator Reedy.
Okay, so, that motion is interesting right now, because there's a lot of stuff. It's sort of interesting. The House amendments go two ways. They slow down some of the implementation on the dates, but then they create a hodgepodge of changes relative to what we had pretty settled in the bill about who was going to pay what and how much, and setting a percentage that you can't go above 0.75% of somebody's wages. Now we have it where you could go up to 2, 3, 4% of somebody's wages if you wanted to. A couple of questions that I've got, people have said as they looked at the reprint, because I just now saw this reprint. So is there, you mentioned was there a floor amendment about paid time off if a business is already offering paid time off in a private plan? This bill, is it true this bill interferes with that?
I did not see, there may have been a floor amendment, I don't know if it was actually, standard notices, let's see, there was the,
You said there was something that regulated, maybe the issue is stacking, is now this is going to allow stacking?
this insert one was a floor amendment from Delegate Charkoudian, which further reaffirmed that the employer-provided leave that is being exhausted of this subsection shall be treated as the same as leave from work for which benefits may be paid under this title.
What does that mean then? Does that mean that if I work for somebody, if I work in a company, not me, but whether it's me or anybody else, if I work in a company and I have a plan that gives me 6 days paid time off outside of what the state does for paid sick leave, and I take those 6 days, I can then still take, that doesn't reduce from the amount of time I'm taking on the state, with the state program?
I think that's right. That's my understanding.
Because what will happen is businesses will just stop doing it. I'll just say, go into the state system.
But, well, I mean, so they're saying here, the bill, the House put in an amendment on page 18.
Okay.
And this came from the committee, this was done in committee. A covered individual shall exhaust all employer-provided leave that is not required to be provided under law before receiving benefits under this title. So,
Yeah, okay, it shall exhaust before they receive benefits, but can they still receive up to 12 weeks?
it's, under this, they could still receive the 12 weeks, but then there's, floor amendment was offered and adopted by the committee, which is insert number 1, that says, for the purposes of the subtitle, employer-provided leave that is being exhausted as required under that language there, of the substance shall be treated the same as leave from work for which benefits may be paid under this title. So I think could be read to be concurrent.
But then it says this subsection may not be construed to reduce any weeks of leave for which benefits may be paid under this title. So that's why I was confused.
I wasn't listening to the debate on this language. The subsection may not be, I think there was a lot of discussion in leave or whether you could still accrue some benefits while you're on leave. So, and the discussion was, I think the chair was saying something along the lines that while you're on this leave, you could still accrue some leave, and I think that's what this is trying to get at, that would preserve that ability.
So wait, so if I'm on leave and I'm taking 8 of my 12 weeks, I still get to accrue leave, annual leave at my other company? No, you're telling me no.
Yeah, I don't really, I could have got a more detailed explanation of what this was about, but.
Well, it seems important to me. Now, I understand. I think the sponsor might have some answers. I'd like to defer, but I do have one other question in a different spot that I'd like to be able to ask.
Well, let me ask this, since we got limited time. Could I see what the questions are coming down here and then back to the sponsor, and then we come back to you? Because we got to go to the floor. Okay, Senator Malcolm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am just trying to understand this June 1st, 2023 date is the date that they must by then set the whatever. Okay, but that contradicts, if I'm understanding, that we would be able to do something in the next session. That's after next session is over.
But they, if you go into the back in the uncodified language and insert 2, that they have to actually complete the parameters of that study by December 1st, 2022. So that's for the upcoming contribution that has to be set. So they have to have this, they have to have all that work done for the first round of contributions by December 1st, 2022.
And then we would then be put in a position to potentially have this in front of this group, have that done, and then be asked to maybe have to change it after that?
I think well, I don't know if you would have to change it. I mean, it's.
No, I'm saying that's what we're being told we would have to do if we didn't necessarily agree. Like, let's say they did come back with 4%, 5%, you know what I'm saying? And so we decided as a body that we thought that that was just not appropriate. We would then have to change it?
It's clear we aren't going to have time to resolve it
I'm
today.
sorry.
That's a good rhetorical question, though. We'll have to come back to it. Okay, Senator Battle.
Thank you. I have a question on the employees that have, or employers that have under 15. So that small employer is not required to pay.
No.
But the employees can participate if they
Yes,
choose.
yes.
So they would be paying the 75% or the 100%?
They would pay whatever the other employees are required to pay under that particular determination.
So that could be a lot of people that aren't paying the full cost of the benefit. They're only paying 75%.
They
Again-
would, no, they would, whatever this process sets for the employee contribution, those employees of employers with 14 or less employees would pay whatever all other employees are required to pay. They can't pay any more, they can't pay any less. They would have to pay that amount under this language.
You understand what I'm saying, though, that the other 25%, if that's what it is not being collected because the employer is not required to pay it?
It would arguably increase the total amount because you're taking out a series of employees who would not have to contribute. I don't know how much we're talking about here. That's what all these studies are
Well,
going to
that's the
come up
problem,
with.
is we don't know how much we're talking about.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on that, I mean, might be making the assumption that it was the 75-25 split that was in our legislation. This could be completely opposite. It could be 50-50, it could be 25%, 75% the other way too. You know, so on my colleague, the sponsor's comments, you know, I think that the House took out an awful lot of the guardrails that we put in. You know, we were, at least I think, very thoughtful in some of the calculations on what we came up with. Interestingly enough, they kept in the benefits part of this. So they decide that they're not going to tell us how the money has to be collected, but they're going to keep in a very prescriptive manner, here's how much you have to pay out, right? That didn't change. So that part stays in, but we have no idea how this is going to be collected. And I'll be honest, I'm very concerned with the comment you made about relevant stakeholders. You know, I have no idea who that is advising the secretary. And I go back to using unemployment insurance as kind of a comparable. You know, again, we have a joint committee on unemployment insurance that is made up of legislators. We evaluate this every year. We provide guidance in doing so and make up legislation that's necessary. This says, you know, state agencies and relevant stakeholders. I don't even know if we're included anymore. You know, to me, that's very concerning.
Feldman.
I just want to, I think one point, maybe plan on, so we're clear. So the secretary says shall set the total rate of contribution percentage whenever that is within this timeline for within the following 2 years. So do we have the authority as the legislature, or for whatever reason we don't like what the secretary did, can we come in the following session and make our own statutory modification, or are we completely precluded statutorily, legally from
You would.
overriding the secretary's determination? Or is this completely shall set language? I just put that out there. It's kind of a
you're never.
Imagination of everything we're going to.
Okay, at least
that?
it's a good rhetorical question. Mr. Sponsor, you had your light on before. All right. Okay, we're ready to hear your question on.
No, Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify that the cost analysis actually allow for informed discussion to take place in estimating. Like, no actuary can actually give you what the benefit or what the pot will be until they have the structure of the program. And I think that's what we're doing here. We're providing for a framework to give them the ability to come up with what the program actually looked like, so they could actually give us an informed opinion that the secretary could use. And I don't think that because this, and Dave could say a little bit more about it, but I think to Senator Hershey's questions about, or somebody asked it, I forgot. You looking at me like you didn't ask the question. Right, yeah, it's easier to blame Hershey. But I don't think with the secretary setting a rate, it precludes us, as the vice chair said the other day, from, making another determination in the statute. Obviously, the secretary, I think, would have to be, would be obligated to any laws or statutes that we made.
Well, let me ask a question, if I'm understanding it. If some of the small employers decide not to participate and leave their employees paying the whole thing, and we don't know.
It's not the whole thing, right? So whatever the split is, 25-35, so the employees would pay the percentage that all other employees are paying. So they wouldn't, that was
That's what I
Senator,
mean.
that was Senator Biden's
Whatever would
question.
come in for them would be simply what they put in without
Correct.
any help. And we don't have any idea now, because it's just up to people who in the future would make a decision, and we don't know how many employers might decide to accept that if that's in the bill. We don't have an idea how much you're gonna bring in to get the program started that way, or to keep it going and be actuarially sound.
But we will know before next session start, right? You're right. We don't know right now what it'll be, but before next session start, this body.
Well, when we find
will know.
out, suppose enough of them decide, then I won't do anything if I'm small, however we define the small employers, and the employees are paying it all.
Again, the employee's not, keep in mind, the employee is not paying at all. They're paying the share in which all other employers are paying.
Well, it
But
is,
for
but
those,
it means there's less be going into the pot for the employees in of that entity.
true, when we talk, I think we're talking about like $1.50, $2. Like when we passed the legislation, it was a 75-25 split, and out of $5.62, the employer would have been paying, I think is about $1.50, $2 difference. And so you're talking about small employers, that being missing from the pot, but you still have a larger pool than what exists today that would be paying into the pot, and the pool will help subsidize whatever those smaller employers aren't paying.
Dave, is there an operational definition in the bill, considering this amendment, of who is a small employer? Because we don't know if we're talking about. No, I mean, how many in Maryland would be in that category?
I would imagine eventually there'll be estimates, and again, as envisioned by the House, that number would probably be, they'd have a better handle on what that number is, so they could estimate, they'll have to have a better number on that handle when they estimate what the cost of the program, what the funds you need to capitalize the program are and to begin paying benefits. So I would assume as they go through this process, they'll figure that out.
Okay, Senator Klossmeyer, then Senator Reed.
Yes, I was under the impression when we put, at first it was, we're going to have the small businesses, 15 and above. And then it was said that it would offset everything else, it would screw everything else up if we excluded them. But now they're back in, so they're not excluded now, so how's that all going to balance out? That's all I have to say, because we didn't put 15, we didn't put any number of employees in our bill, but now all of a sudden it's there, so
Okay, I had promised to go to read it, and we're coming back to the sponsor.
Thank you. I mean, this discussion is very interesting. I mean, this is a lot of stuff here. One question I had, DC has a program like this,
Yes.
or a program. Virginia does not. Pennsylvania does not.
No.
Delaware does not, although they are talking about it. West Virginia does not. Okay. We have a lot of people that work in all of those, we have a lot of businesses in those states that employ Marylanders. And a lot of us, and I, in the interest of full disclosure, I work for a company that's based in another state, far away. This bill specifies any employer that employs at least one person in the state of Maryland, correct? So it's not just Maryland employers, it's any employer. This is a concern I have about setting up, and now that we've made it even less defined as to how much you're gonna have to, now we're stacking leave, and it's gonna make a lot of Marylanders be at a competitive disadvantage for getting jobs in Virginia and out of state, or working for a company that's out of state. They can hire somebody to do the same job and not have to follow through on all of these extensive requirements. It's one thing, paid sick leave was like several days of paid sick leave. This is like weeks. So I don't know if we've given, that's rhetorical, but have we given some thought to that as an issue I think is important as there's a lot of unanswered questions with this bill, it sounds like to me.
Okay, we're going back to the sponsor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Klassemeyer had a question about the 15, whatever. It's really simple. So I think part of the conversation that we had from some of the advocates was to take those who have 15 employees or less out completely, meaning those employers and those employees wouldn't pay anything, right? And so they would be missing. By the way, the small businesses that's defined by this bill of 15 employees or less are approximately 10% of the businesses that we have here in Maryland. This isn't what the House did. The House met us midway, right? The conversation that we had was take out anybody who had 15 employees or less. The employer nor the employees will pay. The House said the employees will pay in because this is a benefit to them, but the employers. And so that's a big difference from not paying anything to meeting us halfway. Does that make sense?
I would want somebody to tell me to pay it all if I may not even want it.
Employees still have to pay.
Correct.
But the employers don't have to
Correct. Because the employees will be the ones that's benefiting from the program.
Well, let me ask this. Suppose I'm a young person recently entering the job market, and I'm from a different state. I have nobody anywhere around here that I'm going to ever need to take care of. And then you have it that the employer wouldn't have to pay, but I would have to pay. Or if you go to, I'm just trying to wonder how it would work in a case like that.
Right. So even though you may be visiting from another state and you might not have a new baby,
I may not
have
anything that's listed in the whole group.
But cancer doesn't stop at serious illness to you don't stop at the state border.
I've got health insurance already. I'm just asking.
Right. So the health insurance will take care of your medical bills, but it won't supplement your income. Right. So yes, your medical bills will be taken care of. But how you going, the question is, how do you continue to get a grilled cheese sandwich or get milk or eggs or all of the other necessities that you need to take care of your household? Should, God forbid, we're hoping that, you're healthy for the rest of your life and won't have any problems. But God forbid, if you had some type of serious illness, what do you then have as a fallback to take care of your responsibility?
Well, I don't know there are a lot of programs, but I'm just wondering in the cases of people
No, good question.
who don't have anybody else that they would ever be responsible for caring for.
Right, and in that case, this is also a protection for the individual as well. Whatever, I think our President Pro Tem said it best, like we never know what hand life might deliver us. And so there may be a serious illness that becomes you. that you hadn't anticipated for, that you didn't put on a calendar or plan for, that you might be able to access this leave. Same with car insurance, right? Like, one of the things that we require here in the state of Maryland is that you have car insurance, not because that we're predicting that you'll have an accident, but in case you do have an accident, you'll be covered.
Okay. If I don't think I see any further. Oh, Senator Hershey.
Madam Chair, again, just a broader comment again. Other than the study at the very end that talks about an outside consultant coming in to see who's best to run and implement this, I don't see what any other part of this legislation is necessary this year if we've all said already that we can take that information, come back next year with the information that's necessary and actually create the best policy. Nothing's being collected until 2023, October anyways. Benefits aren't going out till January 1st, 2025. And so we're arguing over a whole bunch of information that really isn't relevant anymore because we still have to wait on this study to occur.
What makes it relevant is that the House has a different posture on it than we do, and you can't pass the bill both ways.
And we're trying to fight a clock, get it upstairs.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, Senator Hayes.
Madam Chair, I am grateful that the House receded from their original position of turning this whole thing into a study and has agreed, and we're in lockstep with creating a program. I move to concur with the House amendments.
Okay, Senator Reedy.
This is really like a reckless way to make policy here. Everybody knows I voted against the bill. I have questions about the idea, at least the way we're doing it and having it be government run. But what we ended up with coming back from the House was like half studying it longer, but also wiping away any protections that we all had agreed were important in the bill. I think we should at least hold the bill for a day and talk about it and try to find a little bit better way forward. So I'd say not concur.
Well, we got a motion on.
Oh, you had a motion second, okay.
Before us. Any further discussion on the motion? Did we get a second? Okay. All right, Senator Jennings.
Just agreeing with Senator Reedy. I mean, here we are. We have a week and a half to go, but we're trying to rush to get this upstairs so it sits on the governor's desk so he can veto it and it can come down and we can pass this thing. We've had several conversations that we know this thing is off. I mean, the whole conversation about the 15 and under employees, that's leaving a gap in the percentage of how much is going to be paid into this. So it's actually putting it more on the backs of the bigger businesses and the employees to pay more. Because those businesses, what you said, 10% of the businesses aren't paying in their fair share. And I do think it's more than 10% of the businesses out there are more than under 15. I love my job down here, but this is when I get frustrated. And this is tough, to sit here and watch this, that we are going to pass something that is going to affect the industry, businesses in this country, or this state. And I understand employees, it's tough. But I also know how tough it is for businesses. I've had several of them. Some have been successful, some have not. But here we are ramming this thing through. I've used it before. It's Spaceballs. We're moving at ludicrous speed to get this thing up there to pass it in for a perfect bill. Then we're going to come back next year and try to fix it. This is the problem with our legislative process, and it's wrong to be doing it like this.
Okay. And let's hear again, what is the motion that was seconded?
Move to concur with the House amendments.
Again, did somebody second it?
It's been seconded.
Okay. All right, you want to call the roll?
Senate Bill 275, motion is to concur in the House amendments. Senator Feldman?
Aye.
Aye. Senator Klausmeier? No. No. Senator Benson? Aye. Senator Kramer?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Hayes?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Reedy?
No. Explaining my vote?
No.
Explaining my vote? If you vote no on this and we say we won't concur, it doesn't kill the bill. Just says we got to go talk to the House about it. So I vote no.
Senator Augustine?
This is a hot mess, but I'm going to vote yes.
Yes. Senator Beidel?
I second Senator Augustine's motion and vote yes.
Yes. Senator Hershey?
I will
No. Senator Jennings?
Hell no.
No. Madam Chair?
What is the vote thus far?
6-4.
You could vote either way.
Okay, I'm gonna vote no.
No.
There's another concurrence. This is Senate Bill 708. If you recall, this bill would establish a compliance officer within the Maryland Office of the Inspector General for Health to ensure that units in the health department and employees comply with best practices. The House sent it back with an amendment that was worked on with the department. There's a notification procedure that if somebody has a complaint and they bring it to the IG, that they have to respond within so many days. In working with the House, they've extended that 7 days to 30 days and provided, unless providing a reason would have negative impact or jeopardize an existing investigation. So the department is offered those amendments to the bill over in the House, and I believe with these amendments, they are okay with the bill too. So, no, we don't put concurrences on the list. It's Senate Bill 708. Senate Bill 708. The title is, yeah, the title is, it deals with it's a compliance officer it establishes a compliance officer in the Office of Inspector General in the Health Department to aid the Inspector General to conduct their affairs.
Okay. All right, any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. Are you with us? Okay, all right, then we need to call the roll.
Senate Bill 708, move to concur. Senator Feldman? Aye. Senator Klausmeier? Yes. Senator Benson?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Kramer? Yes. Senator Hayes? Yes. Senator Reedy? No. Senator Augustine? Yes. Senator Vital? Yes. Senator Hershey? No. Senator Jennings? No. Madam Chair?
Yes,
Yes. Bill passes.
all right, bill passes. Okay.
Continue voting? Okay. You have a voting list in front of you. Okay, so we'll skip the Senate bill on the list because that is tied to a House bill also on the list. So if you want to take those up at the same time, and we'll go straight to House Bill 1.
Okay.
This is the constitutional amendment that was held. I had a little work group yesterday, and I talked to the Attorney General, and the only thing the General Assembly can pass for a statewide general election is a constitutional amendment. The only times you would have a question going statewide would be a citizen initiative petition, where, then the Secretary, and I guess it depends on who you ask about who writes what up, but the Secretary of State would write that up, and then it would go to the voters, and that would be just a general question.
Which is what the gay marriage was, as well as the abortion debate in 1992, I heard.
Yeah,
We wouldn't put that on the ballot.
But that was a petition from them as well.
So, but you as a body can only pass constitutional
Council,
amendments that go to referendum for
Okay.
the voters. And regarding the language,
To clarify, we can only pass referendums that bring a constitutional
Yes,
amendment
yes,
to
yes.
the voters, not that we can't pass constitutional amendments.
that's correct, okay. And regarding the language, generally, it is the Secretary of State that writes it up. I was confused with the language that goes when you get your information in a ballot that describe, we do all that. But there's two ways you can do. Either you pass the bill, and then the Secretary of State writes up the language that goes on the ballot, or you specify in the bill what language goes on the ballot. And that's what this does, and that's become a practice lately for the legislature. So the language you see here on page 2 of the reprint, lines 17 and 18, would be the language that would show up on the ballot, that do you favor legalization of the adult use of cannabis for use by an individual who is at least 21 years of age on or after July 1st, 2023 in the state of Maryland? So I guess, I hope that answers your questions after my work session.
Favorable.
Do we have a second?
It's got to be a favorable if there's amendment.
Madam Chair, also.
Okay, we got a favorable and a second. Any
It's a favorable with an amendment, because there's an amendment to the, yeah.
Okay.
There's an amendment to the Constitution.
And you're seconding that. Okay. Any discussion on it? Senator Reedy.
Thank you. So, so the amendment is what we discussed yesterday, the individual.
Yeah, it adds this additional language which will go on the ballot.
Yeah, I would feel a lot more comfortable if we added language like what's on page 1, not the exact, maybe not this exact language, but the General Assembly shall provide for the use, distribution, possession, regulation, taxation. I think we should put that on the ballot as well to explain it's going to be legal on or after July 1, and that the General Assembly will promulgate the regulations or whatever. And I mean this is a totally serious amendment. I think you need to tell the voters. I'm glad we're not putting 14 pages on the constitutional amendment, but I think you need to tell the voters that who is going to be making the law around it, that it's even, because we have July 1st, but it does, even then, people aren't going to know what they're voting for. So I think I'd like to offer that as an amendment to add, the General Assembly will provide for the use, distribution, the Maryland General Assembly will provide for the use, distribution, possession, regulation, and taxation of cannabis. And I would move that amendment conceptually. I don't know if I have a second. Maybe not.
Is that a legally
No, Hershey
viable?
seconded. My buddy Hershey seconded.
You could, certainly, you are, you know, as the committee and the General Assembly, you have, yeah, I mean, I don't see why that,
Okay.
either the House will accept it or it goes to conference.
You got something you want to say?
Oh,
All right.
House Annex, we don't do it anymore.
Okay, Senator Feldman.
Well, I don't want to say anything. I'm just going to vote no on that amendment, that's all, without explanation.
Okay, so we're voting on the,
Here, let me just say.
okay.
I think the more words you put in, the more subject you can interpret every word to have a sort of a political, I mean, and I think maybe, you know, there's no way around it. Like, you can't come up with the perfect language. I mean, I would, even the term distribution, possession, you know, has its own sort of connotation. I mean, I think you keep it as simple as possible. And I thought the assertion of the date, but I understand the argument on the, actually, I respect the argument. I'm just going to say that I want to keep it simple.
Protocol, Madam Chair, we already had a motion and a second.
Okay. Well, we're discussing,
No, he can do that, don't do that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't even mind just saying, you know, the use, regulation, and taxation. I mean, I don't mind I understand your point about distribution and possession, which wasn't my intent, but I understand your point. I mean, I just think you gotta be more clear with what we're voting on.
Okay, but we've heard you both, and the motion is before us, so why don't we call a roll?
This is the motion on the amendment, right?
This is the bill as amended.
No, it's.
Oh, no. This is the
It was that
amendment.
amendment. That's,
Right. The Reedy amendment. This is the Reedy amendment.
Why are we taking the?
Because he moved it and Hershey seconded.
But I had already had
Oh my God.
motion, favorable on the bill as amended in a second.
But if you remember the beginning of this session.
But if you guys want to vote on the amendment and kill that first, we can
That's
do
fine,
that.
let's do it, but let's give everybody respect in here to have a discussion, make a motion.
When else are you supposed to offer an amendment?
but by now, I must say I'm confused. I thought that
Just
was
take-
what we were
take up the
voting.
Madam Chair, take up the Reedy amendment, and then we'll take up the July first.
Okay, all right. All right, so
House Bill
we'll
1.
take up the amendment first. So let's call the roll on the amendment.
It's all
Democracy.
House Bill
showing my
1,
Republican love right
No, this is the amendment.
right.
All right. If you're for the Reedy amendment, raise your hand.
You should do a roll call on this one. Madam Chair, you should do a roll call.
I think we,
All right, we voted it.
all right. Okay. All right.
Okay, Madam
Okay.
Chair, I'll go back to My motion favorable on the bill with the referenced amendment at the start of the vote.
Second, Madam Chair.
Okay, let's do the same. If you're for it, raise your hand.
We should do a roll.
I'm trying to,
It's a constitutional.
well, we did the other one that way.
It's important. It's,
All right, well, so we don't waste time, let's just call the roll.
House Bill 1 favorable with amendment. Senator Feldman? Aye. Aye. Senator Klausmeyer? Yes. Senator Benson? No. Senator Kramer? Yes. Yes. Senator Hayes?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Reedy? No. No. Senator Augustine?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Beidle? Yes. Senator Hershey? No. No. Senator Jennings? No. No. Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's go continue down the list. House Bill 178 was heard yesterday. It increases the amount of money that a cottage food in business in a state can have revenues on. It ups it from 25,000 to 50,000. I don't believe there was any objection to that.
Okay, okay, then in that case, all in favor, raise your hand.
I'm not sure now.
Okay, Senator Benson, are you voting this time or not? Senator Benson? Okay, okay. She says no. So that's 10 to 1, I think. Okay. Did I get the correct count? I think it's 10 to 1.
Are you
Okay.
voting no, Senator Benson, on this cottage bill? 178, House Bill 178.
Everybody else voted for it? Okay. All right, then that's unanimous.
We're going to vote to have the rest of the voting tomorrow.
All right, just a minute.
Yeah, yesterday we had a transportation bill that we voted on that was 5-5. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
this is the one I told you about. You're the one that has to make the call, the 5-5 vote.
What is the bill number?
It's up to the chair.
What is the bill number? Do you know the bill number?
So just to explain to the committee, we had a bill that was heard yesterday. It's House Bill 656. There was a motion unfavorable, and the vote was a 5-5 tie. So I did just reach out to the AG just to confirm. The 5-5 tie resulted in the bill being essentially in the same posture as it was, as it came to the committee. On the question of, I think some question was, what does that mean for reconsideration? What happens if you have a 5-5 tie? The rules for reconsideration is that in order to make a motion, you have to be in the prevailing side of the question, but in a 5-5 tie, there's no prevailing side. So the answer from the AG was that anybody could raise a motion for reconsideration. And our committee rules are that that it has to be taken up at the next voting session, but also that advance notice of the motion has to be provided to the chair. So that's the status of the issue.
I gave you some advance notice. I think it's up to the chair.
I didn't get a directive, but I was advised that the vice chair was hoping we would bring it up again. And I'm willing. Okay, they're ringing the bells. All right. They're ringing the bells. Do you want to vote again? All right.